Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to your latest episode of All About Space with your host, Christophe Paget. The previous weeks were busy with moon landers and rocket launches, and this week is no different with JAXA and Intuitive Machines' latest developments. A heap of activities took place at Boca Chica in Texas, especially regarding the new orbital flight test number 3, and I will report some space news with ISRO, SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Stoke Space to finish with the launches of the week. So let's get started. JAXA lander SLIM had a slim chance to wake up after the long lunar night lasting 2 weeks, during which the temperature was extremely cold and therefore the lander constituents would normally get damaged. However, on the 26th, JAXA mentioned that a command was sent to SLIM and a response received confirming that the spacecraft has made it through the lunar night and maintained communication capabilities. So later on, we were even blessed on a picture on your screen. So Slim Engineering worked wonders and deserved our honorable mention. So well done, JAXA. November 18th, 2023, Booster 9 and Starship 25 have taken to the sky for the integrated flight test number 2 from starbase in a SpaceX historic moment where many of the hardware have demonstrated the progress made by SpaceX. The booster number 9 has completed his main mission of delivering the Starship number 25 to its separation altitude of about 80 km, then flipped back and started his boost back burn, which resulted in an explosion. At that point, Starship 25 was still continuing towards orbital altitude, but fell short by about 2 km in altitude and 4,000 km an hour in velocity, and also exploded after over 8 minutes in flight. Only a few weeks ago, a mishap report was handed over by SpaceX to the FAA, which is the required procedure. Now, this week, the FAA has reviewed and closed this mishap investigation with requested actions prior to receiving license by the FAA. In a nutshell, SpaceX identified the root causes of the explosions and identified a total of 17 corrective actions, 7 relating to the booster design and 10 to the Starship itself. SpaceX also emphasized that further improvements unrelated to the mishap corrective actions were being added to booster number 10 and Starship 28 ahead of flight test number 3, such as the electronic thrust vector control system, as well as increased propellant loading speed at the launch site. Ahead of the orbital flight test number 3, SpaceX has released some updates about the flight test number 2. Regarding booster 9 explosion, I quote, "It was caused by a liquid oxygen filter blockage causing a Raptor engine to fail energetically and starting a chain reaction that resulted in the explosion during boost back just after stage separation. Corrective measures have been implemented onto booster 10, the next one to fly." Starship 28 has changed at least 2 of his engines and was then moved to Pad B for further engine testing. Now, this week, we have witnessed, thanks to my colleagues from NASA Spaceflight, a sort of spin prime test consisting of sending propellant through the engine without igniting them so that a partial engine testing can take place without warning the residents for such a test, as it is considered as a low risk of explosion. Booster 10 is now back to the launch mount. The new prefabricated wall protecting the tank farm from the Starship booster thrust is being permanently set in place with concrete. Several smaller tanks have been delivered at Starbase launch site to complement the tank farm. And Starship 29, the one expected to fly on orbital flight test number 4, made a short appearance in the production site. It looks to be in an advanced stage of readiness to me, with all parts assembled, the TPS tiles completed, and engines installed. So it has been even rolled out to the launch site to be installed on Pad B for future static fire tests. SpaceX is definitely ramping up their effort to get spacecraft hardware ready. As for the Star Factory, I must admit I'm not seeing rapid progress this week compared to previous weeks. After traveling more than 600,000 miles or 1 million kilometers, Odysseus landed within 1.5 kilometers of his intended Malapert A landing site. Using a contingent laser range finding system patched hours before landing, because the intended guidance laser was not enabled due to a physical safety pin which was left by mistake on the craft after takeoff. Despite that issue, and in less than ideal conditions, Odysseus still successfully softish landed on the moon last week, and is therefore the first US spacecraft to land on the moon since Apollo 17 in 1972. So that was quite a long time to wait. Flight controllers at Intuitive Machines continued to communicate with IM-1 Odysseus spacecraft. It's managed to send payloads, science data, and imagery back to Earth. Intuitive Machines had to choose between science data being powered hungry, shortening Odysseus' battery life, or putting Odysseus on standby, lengthening his operation on the moon with little science benefit. So they have obviously opted for more data, since the moon night is approaching, which will last about 2 weeks and is likely to damage the craft in the process. But who knows? Slim did work afterwards, so time will tell. Based on Earth and Moon positioning, and until the lander's solar panels are no longer exposed to light, they expect communication with Odysseus to last until Tuesday morning of next week. Odysseus pictures you see were taken at approximately 30 meters above the lunar surface, while his main engine throttled down more than 24,000 miles per hour. Now, the images provided here are the closest observations of any spacecraft mission to the South Pole region of the Moon. And here, NASA Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter captured this image of Odysseus on the Moon on February 24th from an altitude of about 56 miles or 90 kilometers. So what you see now is the last picture of Odysseus before it runs out of power. ISRO has now selected 4 Indian astronauts, or as they want to call it, Vyomnaut, with Vyom meaning sky or space, to ride on their future homemade capsule called Gaganyaan. The unmanned capsule is expected to be launched in July this year, and a crewed version launched in 2025. You may remember a previous episode with Stoke Space testing his propulsion engines on his second stage in the past month. Well, this week they have upgraded their stage 2 engines with 30 chambers, which were subsequently tested, as you could see the picture on your screen. So more to come on this in future episodes. SpaceX is boasting about the recent ability to post on X, formerly Twitter, using a normal mobile phone through communication via Starlink satellites, using direct-to-cell capability. I could imagine that in 10 years or so we will forget about mobile masts and we will all be able to use satellites instead. Blue Origin has been performing cryogenic fuel testing on his New Glenn rocket at Launch Complex 36 at Cape Canaveral in Florida. we gradually get to see more tests and hardware from New Glenn, so great news for space enthusiasts. SpaceX launched on February 25th his Mission Group 639 out of his Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. On his 13th reflight, the Falcon 9 sent this time 24 Starlink V2 mini satellites to their usual circular low Earth orbit. We are used to see 23 satellites being sent from Florida, however this time it was 24 thanks to further improvements on Falcon 9 according to Elon Musk's tweet, increasing to a useful payload weight of 17.5 metric tons or just over 38,000 pounds, the highest payload that the Falcon 9 can achieve from Florida. On the first stage, later landed on the drone ship a shortfall of Gravitas. February 29th, Roscosmos launched his meteorological satellite Meteor M24 with a Soyuz 2.1B and Frigate M upper stage from his site 1S at Vostochny Cosmodrome in Russia to a circular Sun synchronous orbit at 820 km or 510 miles and just over 98-degree inclination. 18 smaller satellites were also sharing the same rocket. On the same day, China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation launched a Long March 3BE out of Xichang Satellite Launch Center in China. His payload was the Chinese communication satellite WHG-01, destined to geostationary orbit. On the same day also, SpaceX launched a Falcon 9 from Space Launch Complex 40 in Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida for his Starlink Mission Group 640, sending 23 satellites to circular low Earth orbit. His booster landed for the 11th time on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. This flight was actually brought forward due to the Crew 8 flight being delayed due to high winds. I leave you now with the amazing pictures from Jira Venkatraman of the Seagull Nebula taken over the peak at Pinnacles National Park in California. Now, this is an emission nebula on the night sky that is vast, spanning an angle over 5 times the diameter of the full moon as we see it, but in reality it's over 200 light years wide, which is 1.9 quadrillion kilometers or 1.2 quadrillion miles wide. Because it is so far away, some 3,650 light years away, that's just over 34 quadrillion kilometers or 21 quadrillion miles. Now, the head of the nebula is catalogued as IC2177, and the star cluster under his right wing is catalogued as NGC2343. Consisting of mostly red glowing hydrogen gas, the Seagull Nebula incorporates some dust lanes and is forming stars. The featured image is a composite of long exposure images of the background sky using a refractor and a short exposure images of the foreground, all taken consecutively with the same camera and from the same spot. Thank you for watching your episode of All About Space with your host Christophe Paget. Until next week, have a great time. Thank you and goodbye.